everybody. It's me, MattHawes of the Happy Show, and we're going on with the happy story. This is going to be part 2 of that long history. Again, this is kind of a free-form thing. I'm not doing this from a script. It's all from memory, and so it's kind of loose. But you'll see video clips and stuff. It will be edited with different things that basically pertain to whatever I'm speaking about. And where we left off is I was going on about the early days and the early beginnings of the Happy Show. If you want to check out the previous video, if you haven't already, check that out. From here on, I will go through this explanation of the beginnings. You'll just follow along, and if you come in late in the series, or those people that came late in the series, they just got to figure it out.
Welcome to. Hey, this is the Happy Show. Welcome to the Happy Show.
Let's go on right now. Woohoo! Yeah! Okay, so basically, David W. Johnson was going by the name 5-0 Elliott. He really wanted to be called 5-0 Elliott at this period. Again, David's an interesting character. And so during this time that he was arguing to get public access against, here in Evansville, Indiana. And he had to go up against a lot of people who didn't want it for whatever reason. Basically, the cable companies weren't interested in putting on public access because it's non-profit for them. And these companies are all about the profit. I always thought they should look at it as kind of a customer service thing. This is something you're doing to help the community, help your presence in the community. And it's all about giving that community a voice. So they should have been willing to support it and look at it as a bonus, not a minus. But David had a long battle, but he ultimately won it because the law was on his side about it. And he got a public access channel here in Evansville, Indiana. In Evansville, Indiana, we have 2 primary cable companies, at least since the late 90s. And originally one was called Sigicom, and before that, I think it was called TCI Internet Connect, or whatever. Anyway, but it was Sigicom at this point in time, in the late 90s, early 2000s. And another one that was operating around here is Insight Communications. So those are the 2 cable companies we had here. Insight didn't basically give in about the whole public access thing immediately. They had to be persuaded a bit more, which was to come. There was still a couple of years to come, I think, before they actually went ahead and gave in basically and allowed there to be a public access channel after some pressure. But before that incident happened, Sigicom did decide to go ahead and have a public access channel. Now here in Evansville, and I'm sure it's true of a lot of other communities, the public access channels will have a lot of church organizations want to put on their shows, because this is the way a lot of churches use it, because it's their way to reach out to the community. Churches recognize this. A lot of other groups don't seem to recognize the power that they have with public access and such. And in this internet age, maybe it doesn't have the same impact it could have, because there's other opportunities out there, with the internet. But it's still a viable form of communication to reach a mass audience. Of course, public access is limited to the community around you. Whenever I put on a show on public access, it's only put out to the surrounding city area. Each community, each city basically has its own public access channels, and they maintain it within those cities themselves, though they may sponsor shows from other areas. And so at this time, David had finally gotten, in the year, I think it was 1999, David would be able to answer more specific, more certainly on that. But around the year 1999, David finally succeeded in getting a public access television channel shown here in Evansville, Indiana. And he started putting on his shows. Now, what his shows were a mix of things. He did a whole bunch of different kinds of shows. Predominantly, he did cooking shows. He did stuff that would eventually become most popularly known as the Kitchen Magician, though there was Mealtime and a whole bunch of other names that went under before and after. But its longest title, and the one that most people would recognize it from in this area who remember seeing it, is the Kitchen Magician, the Culinary Conjurer of Mealtime Magic. That's a little slogan I added for him. And what happened is he was also doing his other show, Warriors of the Brave New World, if I remember correctly. WBNW was another show he put on. And it was kind of a surreal at times, offbeat, odd show. Other times, very informative. David is a very interesting person. He's a very interesting individual, very creative and unique. I said in this last video, if there's ever a person I've ever met that was unique, it's David W. Johnson, and his show reflects that. David, with his show, he has, it's a mix of all sorts of things that interest him, but it could be, honestly, the most kooky thing you've ever seen in the most positive way of saying that. It is. It's just wildly interesting at times. And even people who didn't quite enjoy it, strictly speaking, couldn't look away from it. There was just something about that. And we're kindred spirits to a degree. I think David, he's in a realm by himself when it comes to some of those things that he did. But I've always had quirky history, a quirky way of doing things myself. So I was sympathetic to, and I enjoyed his shows. In fact, they're just wildly fascinating. I would love to be able to share more with you, but perhaps that's a story for a different time about David, different things with David. But as the year 2000, David was putting together the Warriors of the Brave New World, and he and a friend of his were wanting to do this kind of sketch that was based around the release of the Phantom Menace on, at that time, VHS, showing how long ago this was. DVDs were just now coming into the scene. And so they were looking to track down the copy of the Phantom Menace on VHS as it was being released, which it was at the time of their filming. They had this ideal, and they wanted to film it at my shop. I own Comics Unlimited in Evansville, Indiana. That's not a plug, but I do. I want you to know that because it's important to the story. And he wanted to use this as a storefront, but not necessarily represent my shop as a comic book shop. Though again, David, it's kind of interesting about things because it's like, well, Dave, how do you really show this off as being another kind of shop? He was thinking more like a department store. I was like, you can't pretend a film that this is a department store. It looks nothing like it, but what the heck? You go along with David on things sometimes. And and the whole idea was I was supposed to play a customer looking for, if I remember correctly, something with Darth Maul.
Issue have Darth Maul in it?
No, sir, this is Spawn, not Star Wars.
But doesn't Darth Maul, sometimes guest star in other books? Wasn't there, a Star Wars with X-Men crossover a couple months ago?
Not that I'm aware of, sir.
I heard there was. I think you're lying.
I'm not lying, sir.
Oh, okay. Well, anyway, okay.
The Star Wars books are to the left and down to the right, 3 columns.
Those are Star Wars books down there?
Yes.
I think those are Star Trek books. They're not the same thing, it's a different kind of...
That was my first taste of being on public access or being on film with the intent of it being shown to an audience, not just to be family members like family home videos. And I liked it. It's kind of fun. I thought, well, that's kind of neat. And David told me about, a little bit more about public access here in Evansville. And here in Evansville, the cable channels, they don't want to bother with maintaining a studio or anything else, or having nobody's volunteered to put together a studio. So basically, here in Evansville, we have to film everything ourselves. The budget and everything. Cameras, all that's all upon the producer. The producer submits their shows. They produce it and everything, and take care of all expense and all that. The only thing the cable companies that were here at the time, Insight Sigcom, and now it's still here, but what Sigcom becomes WOW eventually, the only thing they have to do is show the shows, and that seemed to be a hard task for them. Just show the shows, and preferably on the scheduled time that they said they would show them. So basically, I learned about this. I thought, this is kind of interesting. I had fun, but I don't know if I would want to, go through the trouble, because at the time I didn't have a video camera. And I thought, well, I'm going to have to buy a video camera and all that. But yeah, it was entertaining ideas, and I entertained it. But that was about it for about almost 3 years. But in that time, when when I was doing stuff with David, he would, there have been about another 2-3 appearances I made on his shows in various capacity. And I got closer thinking, I really would like to make my own public access show. This is a pretty neat thing to do. I mean, it's just, I already had the shop and was doing that for my livelihood and business, and I already have enough other hobbies and interests, but yet there's just something cool about that. It's like, wow, I can actually put on my own show on a TV station here in Evansville, and the people in the surrounding city and the areas that's picked up, that outlie that area, would be able to see it too. And I thought, darn, that's neat. And so that was the thought that was percolating, there you go, in my mind, until the fateful day when David did come back to my shop, not to ask me to film another show for one of his programs, but he had a proposal. And we'll continue that in the next video.